el día que el Señor actuó. Regocijémonos y alegrémonos en él. This is the day the Lord hath made. We will rejoice and we will be glad. I wear my liturgical collar anytime I'm in any capacity to share the stories of the families or the children, because for me it is a faith-based response. There is one God, one Creator, Redeemer, Savior of us all. Imago Dei, in the image of God, God created the world. And so, I affirm that the families are created in the image of God, and God said at the end of that 6th day after He created females, it is very good.
Amen.
And so I want to share with you my journey and how I became to be a volunteer chaplain with refugee families seeking asylum. I had been an organizing pastor of a new church in New Braunfels, Texas, with no funding, no building, no land, no people. Just go plant a church for the Presbyterian Church USA. All I did was church planting stuff. Once the church chartered and was becoming a big girl church, as we would say, I was asked if I would chair the Mission Outreach and Justice Committee of Mission Presbytery, which is 150 Presbyterian churches in South Texas. I didn't know what that did or anything about it, but I knew I finally didn't have to be on a committee, and I said, oh no, thank you. And they said, oh, but we need you. And I said, okay, 1 year. But I had no idea what they did, anything about it at all. Well, Mission Presbytery and the Presbyterian churches are very actively involved in immigration. And so I did the training. I went to the Interfaith Welcome Coalition and had the training to be a visitor volunteer and to go to Karnes City and got hooked up with different mothers and children as a volunteer. I did that faithfully from November 2014 until March 2015. And I'm a pastor, and I've been a mixed media artist most of my life, and we did a lot of art with the kids. That's what we did. So I said, hey, it's spring break. I wonder if they have spring break at the detention center. Come to find out, they have it for 2 weeks. They don't know what to do with the kids because now that the school doesn't come in from San Antonio, and so I volunteered effectively to be the entertainment committee and to come and do art with the children. And that very first time I had absolutely no idea what was going on, the stories, the context, anything at all. All I knew is that Pastora Elena, I love children, the children love me, I love art. I brought 2 huge Poland suitcases full of art supplies. They counted everything in both of those things. I went through security to make sure there wasn't something bad in there. But I went in, we had a wonderful time, and it was only later, really after I'd been kicked out, that I started translating and getting a sense from the very first time I was there. A little boy wrote from that very first session in March 2015, Memories from Home was the theme. I remember when my father beat my mother. We came here because we almost missed life. The very first session, and it went downhill from there as the stories unfolded more and more detailed. That was from a little boy. And then fast forward, I went in several times a month, and I was really the entertainment committee for the children, and then in the afternoon I did earrings and bracelets with the families, my mother's. Not really my thing, I'll just tell you, but the moms wanted it and they let me in, and so it's called the Ministry of Presents. Thanks be to God, let's do bracelets and earrings. And then fast forward, there was an attempted suicide at Karnes inside. A mother, a 19-year-old mother, had learned that she was to be deported the next day. She snapped her ID badge in half and attempted to saw at her veins and attempted suicide. Because I was a visitor volunteer, the word went out that you could call in and say, hey, I want to talk to this person with this, long number, and then they would be allowed to call back at no charge as pastoral care over the phone. Well, I speak bad Spanish boldly, but I need you to see my face. I need to be able to gesture. That whole telephone thing ain't working for me. So I contacted the powers that be and said I would be happy to drive 70 miles and have a one-on-one with my mother and her 3 children. Or I would be happy to facilitate art as spiritual care for all of the mothers. And that is in fact what happens. And so the images on this side, these 4 images here, they were created at that very first Art as Spiritual Care, which was designed as spiritual care for the mothers. And the theme was a hand prayer. And I said to the mothers, when we pray, we often fold our hands. We never put them down. We often put them up, inviting God to come into our lives and to be with us as we pray. And so I invited the mothers to put one hand face up, draw around it, and then to express their prayers for themselves, for their families, and all. So that was the very first one that we did. And then a miracle happened. Miracles do happen. It's important that you continue to work and advocate. Keep slogging. At that time, it was determined that the mothers and children could be detained interminably, and that Flores, you'll hear more about it, didn't count for children if they were with their mothers. Thank you for playing. Guess again. Because the advocates slogged through and browbeat and got the word happening, they said, okay, children cannot be detained internally even with their mothers. Can I get an amen? Amen. Miracles happen. That's the work that we do. And so from when I went in to do the art of spiritual care for the mothers, the next time I came back, the place was empty. Because everybody had been there longer than the Flores amount of time, and so they were all gone. So I brought all my usual stuff, and I'm expecting to do art with 40, 50, 60, 70 moms. They had 13 mothers there. 13. And one of the workers said, there wasn't nobody here yesterday. And I'm thinking, I'm guessing you probably wouldn't have told me either if I showed up yesterday with all my stuff and drove my 7 miles. You probably wouldn't have said nothing, right? So we did art with the handful of mothers that were there, and the theme was, who am I? I'm more than a woman detained inside this for-profit detention center. Who am I? And you'll see some of those art exhibits there. And so as I became, to understand what was happening, I put on my Dr. Boursier hat and did research and reading and examination, and then came to know the deep systemic issues that are going on and why the families are here. So then I developed the art reflections, so they followed art therapy practices for trauma from art therapy and trauma recovery. So they became much more focused and pointed. Dr. Judith Herman, MD, is the guru of trauma theory. So it's her ideals in connection with art therapy practices. So that then they became very focused and pointed on helping specifically the families what was most urgent and important for them, which is getting released from family detention and not being deported. So you'll see some of the examples, and it will say, my case for asylum. And they literally, I helped them, guide them through how they would practice in this safe environment with Pastora Elena to write their story and then cover it up with art and transform it into a new hope and a new future. And I speak bad Spanish better boldlier now than I did before. But they had bilingual workers in there, and they would say across the room, Pastora, I have another one here for you. And what that meant was a woman was weeping. She couldn't say the words because the trauma was so horrible, she couldn't write it down. And I would say to her, if you cannot write the difficult words where it's completely safe with Pastora Elena here, how will you ever be able to say it when that very important person in the uniform is sitting in front of you and you must say the words? And they'd be like, give me a pen, I'm going to write it down. So that's what art of spiritual care does, and that's what this artwork came out of. So I want to share with you a few of their words. You can read them in Spanish. When you see Spanish words written on the bottom layer, they're their words. There's also translations of them, but here are a few that speak to my heart, and these are direct translations from the families. My reasons for leaving. I left Honduras running in fear from my husband. I suffered much domestic violence. My children suffered too, many times. The gangs molested my daughter many times. They did evil things to her. We have suffered enough. I'm very sad when I remember all of the suffering that my husband caused. He beat me. He mistreated me. He tried to kill me. I ask my God, please help me to forget all of the bad, all of the evil. Another mother wrote in the reflection response to Who Am I? I am a mother. My duty is to protect my daughter. I am a Catholic. I have faith in God. I have faith in this country, the United States. I trust this place, the United States. There are laws here to protect everyone. Here, we have a hope for a future. I want my daughter to have a dignified life. In the United States, there is protection for the good heart. Here, the leaders fight for the people. And I will say to you, when the leaders do not fight for the people, then the people must rise up and fight for the people. Now is not a time for silence. A reason for leaving. In my country, El Salvador, insecurity and violence grow bigger every day. A wave of violence is unleashed for as little as 50 cents. There is fear to leave for work in the morning and more fear to return home from work in the evening. The gangs extort, the gangs assault, the gangs rob, the gangs kill, unemployment, violence, killings. The gangs molest our civic tranquility. Amid the violence and the death, we are on the list to be killed. There is no possibility for a peaceful sleep. When we leave for work in the morning, only God alone knows if we will return alive in the evening. Violence and death are everywhere. So it's a little overwhelming when you spend a lot of time one-on-one with the families and you're able to hear their stories firsthand. And it's particularly appalling to me when I will have someone say to me, "And you believed them?" Yes. They have no reason to lie, Pastora Elena. I cannot fix it for them. I cannot rescue them. All I can do is be present and sit with them in the ashes and weep with them and pray with them and encourage them and to remind them what they already know, that they are created, Imago Dei, and that God does have a hope and a future for them. I have, out of this, after I was excused, and my security clearance was rescinded on December 15th, 2016, because I actually had the audacity to speak in public about the injustice that the families receive when they arrive at our border. And I learned it firsthand from the families. I didn't make it up. So here's one more story. The Hilera was horrible. The refrigerator or cooler. Cold. We ate frozen sandwiches. We drank agua pura. 5 days. We did not bathe. Cold. Sleeping on the floor. Crowded. Cramped. It was very, very cold. My daughter cried and cried. There was nothing I could do. I am her father. I was helpless to protect her. She suffered in the Hilera. The Hilera is a horrible place. And then they sent us to the Parera, the dog kennel. Fast forward now. I was excused and asked to leave. And so I had made a promise to the families as they gave me permission to photograph their work and share their stories. With your permission, I'd love to share your witness outside of these locked walls. Yo tengo pastora. Soy pastora. Yo tengo grande boca. Grande boca. I have a big mouth. The mothers all laughed and they said, "Yeah, baby, share my story so the world can hear." And my ability to share the story was limited because if you do speak out, you are off with your head. That's just the way it is. There is absolutely no way you speak in public that you will be allowed inside any kind of security clearance, anything related to immigration. Fact. So now I've written 2 books. The first one I wrote is called The Ethics of Hospitality. It came out in February, and it's an interreligious argument with the Abrahamic faith tradition, the Jewish community. We share the same Torah, the same first, Hebrew scriptures. So also then the Christian tradition and the Abrahamic also includes the Islamic tradition. So those 3 Abrahamic traditions, and the commonality that we share, that love of God means love of neighbor. Can you imagine if every Christian, every Muslim, and every Jew around the world said, "Yeah, enough. Enough with what is happening with immigration." We could be a voice if we would use our words. And then my minister colleagues said, "Well, that's all fine and good, Helen, but nobody in my church will read that book because there's too many big words in it." So I wrote a book with smaller words. And it comes out in December. And it's called Desperately Seeking Asylum, Testimonies of Trauma, Courage, and Love. And I even used contractions in the book. I'm real proud of myself on that one. So I want to share a story with you from family separation. And this story is in this forthcoming book. And this mother and son, it is their story. The mother shared this story with me as we were weeping. And with her permission, I photographed her, and then later I did this simple art piece to express the love of a mother and her 7-year-old son who were forcibly separated at our border when she requested asylum. So here's her testimony of the experience. She wasn't allowed to speak. First of all, they came in the wee hours of the morning when she'd only been there for a couple of hours and took her son, crying and weeping, pulled him from her arms. She wasn't allowed to speak to him until she had been at another detention center for 16 to 18 days. And then finally she was allowed a total of 4 10-minute phone calls with her son. She said the conversation with her 6-year-old was always the same. She said she could hear the sadness in his voice as he asked his questions. Son: "Hi, Mom. When are you coming to see me?" The mother: "Soon. I will come to get you soon." Son: "When am I going to see you again?" The mother: "Soon. We will be together soon." Son: "When are they going to let you out?" The mother: "Soon. They will let me out soon." Son: "Are they feeding you? Are they feeding you enough?" The mother: "Yes. They are feeding me. They are feeding me enough." Son: "I want to be with you. I want to be with you." The mother: "Soon. We will be together soon." She explained that she could barely get the words out. There was such a knot in her throat. And then she would hang up and just cry and cry and cry. What is ours to do? These are real people and real stories. And it's really happening in our world and in our country. Now is not the time for silence. And so I'd like to leave this part of the conversation with the words of Martin Luther King Jr. from the closing paragraph of the last book he wrote. "We are faced with the fact that tomorrow is today. We are confronted with the fierce urgency of now. There is such a thing as being too late. There is such a thing as being too late. Procrastination is still the thief of time. Sister Norma Pimentel is an amazing Roman Catholic sister down in the valley who just does phenomenal work. And early on in that training I took way back when I had no clue what was going on, she spoke to a group at Mission Presbytery, a bunch of Presbyterians. And she compared the circumstances to a burning building. And think of the old movie, The Towering Inferno. People are jumping out of the building. They're jumping out and they're landing on U.S. soil. What are you going to do? Shove them back into the burning building? Or are you going to say, bienvenidos, welcome. May we become a nation that welcomes. Can I get an amen?
Amen.
Thank you all.